Recently ranked alongside Spitfire and Concorde as one of the most iconic British designs of the last century. Well, this year marks the 80th anniversary of its original publication, so we sent Ian Lee to find out a little more about the man who designed it and the reasons why it stood the test of time so well.
It reproduced almost anywhere on pretty much anything, even pants.
It must be one of the most immediately recognisable pieces of graphic design ever created. For newcomers to the capital, it's an indispensable aid to getting from A to B. And even veteran tube users like me would struggle without it. The extraordinary thing about the London Underground tube map is it looks as though it could have been designed yesterday. And if you look carefully in the bottom corner, you can see the name of the man we have to thank for its design. Harry Beck wasn't a graphic designer. He was an engineering draftsman born in Finchley, who drew up the diagram in his spare time while working at the London Underground Signals Office.
OK, so we've got some of the maps here.
Anna Renton is senior curator at the London Transport Museum.
He was made redundant because of the Great Depression, kind of 1930-31, and then he came back to work for London Transport in 1932. So it's actually during this period of redundancy that he started experimenting with trying to come up with a new design for the tube map.
Early maps not only showed the tube route, but also the streets, parks and local landmarks. These were removed from later editions, but the lines continue to faithfully follow their actual path on the ground.
It was Beck that thought, well, why does this map have to be geographically accurate? You know, why does it need to do that? Because actually it needs to deliver important information about which trains you need to get on, where do you need to change trains, and you know, which station is coming next. And actually that's more important than geography.
This is pretty much the finished article, is it?
That's right, yeah. So this is an example of the first poster version of Beck's map. So this is what would have been hung on stations in March 1933.
Here at the V&A Museum, there is a tiny piece of paper that I'm told provides a fascinating clue into Beck's early thinking. What we've got here is the original underground map that's all kind of confusing and swirly and is a bit of a nightmare to read. We have Beck's improvement, the original, but you've got something that predates even this, haven't you?
This is Harry Beck's original sketch from 1931 that he made up to represent his new scheme for the underground system, and it's a very basic sketch. It's ripped out of a notepad. You can see there's a little hole all the way along here where you can see it's been physically pulled out of a sketch pad or a notepad, and he's just drawn in very rough pencil lines around the edges. You can see the line of the Thames here. What's interesting is even at this early stage, the central line is the same with the drop, the northern line coming down here. So even though this is early, this is still, he's got the vision in his head of what it's going to be. Absolutely, and you can see, even though the design is very radical, he wanted to make it recognisable to people. There was no point in overhauling things completely unnecessarily. So he kept the central line as it became orange, although that was later changed to red because it was deemed easier to see. And everything else is essentially familiar to us, and the district line is still in green and the northern line is still in black. The Bakerloo line was never in correction fluid or anything, was it? They changed that rightfully. They've changed that, absolutely. But Beck's radical map wasn't adopted without some serious umming and ahhing first. When he first presented it in 1931, the underground bosses said no because they felt that it was too radical, too different, people wouldn't like it. But then actually by 1932, towards the end of that, they decided that they'd give it a go, and in 1933 they printed it as an experiment, but actually they never looked back after that.
So what puts the underground map on a par with the Spitfire and Concorde as a design classic? Well, I've come to the Design Museum to find out.
I think if you compare the underground map to something like the red telephone box, which people greatly love, the telephone box is disappearing because maybe it doesn't function very well in the modern world. But the underground map adapts beautifully, you can add more information to it, and most importantly, it uses good design to communicate information really well that people still understand today.
Harry Beck's design was so successful that it's been copied and used by transportation systems all around the world. Delhi, Shanghai, and it's even being used by the Paris Metro and in Tokyo.
But although others may have borrowed Beck's ideas, they've not always translated them as successfully. Dr. Max Roberts is a university psychologist and self-confessed map nut.
What is this? This is just awful. This is the official Paris Metro map. And it doesn't simplify reality at all. Instead of simplicity, you just get a pile of zigzags.
I have travelled on the Paris Metro, and it can be a nightmare to get around.
So if you look at line 4, which goes from top to bottom, there are 17 corners from end to end. That's more than any underground line.
Okay, and what's this map we've got here?
Okay, this is very controversial. This is the Madrid Metro map.
It's making my eyes hurt. I can't make head and tail of it.
There's a good reason for that. The map's not actually showing you where the centre of Madrid is. Right? The nice thing about the underground map is you can see that's the important part of London. And wherever you are, on the whole, that's where you want to go.
You might think that coming up with a design icon which has been copied around the world would have made Harry Beck his fortune. You'd be wrong.
He got paid 5 guineas at the time for his design, and then he actually maintained his relationship with the map for a really long time. He kept on redesigning it and making all the alterations and changes until 1959, and so it was more of a labour of love really for Beck than a money-making escapade.
But while everyone recognises the brilliance of Harry Beck's original design, some feel the modern version has lost its way.
The map today is designed to fit on exactly the same size piece of paper as Henry Beck's map in 1933, but that's with over 100 extra stations on the map. The whole thing is just crushed into place.
And you think you've come up with a better design than this?
Yes, the simplest thing you can do is just make the map bigger, and by doing that you can smooth out the complex trajectories of the lines.
I'm assuming you've sent this to Transport for London and they've pounced on it, and this is going to be the new map?
No. When they took the river off the map a few years ago, there was a public outcry and the press got involved, and they didn't come across in a very good light. And ever since then, they're very cautious about making major changes to the map.
Is it true that you've designed a curvy London Underground map?
Yes. Here is curvy map.
Fantastic. How easy is this one to read?
This is just as easy to use as the current official map. Half the people who see this map say it's the most beautiful thing they've ever seen, and the other half say it's a complete travesty and they totally hate it.
London Underground has confirmed there are no immediate plans to make any dramatic changes to Harry Beck's original design.
So, happy anniversary, trusty old tube map, 80 years and counting. That way.
Ian Lee there, and I'm sure Mr. Beck's marvellous map will still be helping us around the capital 80 years from now. Well, that's nearly all for this evening, but before we go, let's have a quick look at what's coming up on next week's programme. We reveal how millions of pounds of parking tickets handed out in the capital could have been issued illegally.
The local authorities, they know exactly what they're doing, and it's called cheating.
We go behind the scenes of the controversial scheme where volunteers befriend paedophiles to stop them reoffending.
This man was completely unable to come out of his shell at all. He was so remorseful for what he'd done.
And we meet London's unsung heroes who helped end apartheid in South Africa.
The sense of doing something really important was with us throughout.
And that's all from this week's Inside Out London. If you've missed any of tonight's show, catch up on the iPlayer. Just head to our website. The address is bbc.co.uk/Inside Out, and then click on London. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again next week.